I'm live. Hello. Welcome to another Monday Masterclass with your girl, Natalie, Coach Nat, the Keto Bikini Pro. Happy Monday. Hope you all are having a wonderful week and a great start to May so far. Cheers to that. We got through the first week of May. For those who are in our challenge, our summer prep challenge, you made it through the first week. You may have done the things. You may not have done all the things. We threw a lot of stuff at you. So don't expect you all to have done all the things, but you made it through that week. We are all starting to make it through May. This night's topic, it's another Mindset Monday, another Mindset Masterclass. As you know, my favorite topic of all, because this is the crux of everything. I could not believe, I think I mentioned this last Monday, I could not believe I have not yet done a masterclass on this. Resistance. Resistance is the topic of the night. So, how to recognize and respond to resistance along your journey. So, this is something that we will all experience all throughout our lives, in every area of our lives. No matter what, there's nothing you can do to eliminate all resistance from your life. So this concept is so important to understand and to recognize when it shows up so you can identify what it is and not beat yourself up about it, but be realistic, expect it to come, be prepared for it to arrive. And so when it does, you see it for what it is, you can cut through the BS and you can keep moving forward. So I'm going to break down tonight, what is resistance? Why do we have it? Where does it come from? When does it show up? How does it show up? And then what can we do about it? Because this pesky little thing can throw us off. The term I always hear, derail you. You know, I always like to say nothing can derail you except yourself. So this is the pesky little thing that feels like it's you, feels like it's coming from you, your own mind, your own brain, because it is. It's a part of your brain. It's that pesky little emotional brain I talk about all the time, the limbic system. So when we can get ahead of this resistance, know that it's going to show up, see it and recognize it for what it is. When it does show up, we can act differently in the face of it. I'm going to give you some examples, a whole lot of examples. I want to hear from you if you're on the chat tonight. If you have examples when I bring up each of the categories that we're going to talk about tonight, I think you'll all have examples from your own lives. So let's create a laundry list of examples of what resistance can look like in real life so we can all be prepared for it. Speaking of being prepared, I was not prepared tonight with enough water because I can feel that I probably have about this much left in here. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to introduce the definition of psychological resistance, because you know I like to start by defining our terms. And this was very fascinating to me when I looked up the definition of resistance. And I found this definition of psychological resistance and this type of something called the psychoanalytic method, which is a Sigmund Freud method. Really fascinating stuff here. So I'm going to introduce this, and then I want to give you the 5 categories that are within this definition of psychological resistance that I'm going to share some examples from each of those categories. So I want to share those categories with you all so you can get your wheels turning and think about some examples in your own lives and your own health and fitness journeys, because I want it to be all health and fitness focused, right? When we're trying to follow a diet, when we're trying to follow a training program, when we're trying to change our lifestyle habits to be healthier, I want us all to collaborate and create a big, long list. So when I share those categories with you, I'll let you think on it, and I'm going to go refill the water at that time. So shout out to Coach Mary Grace, who just made it on. Yay. Michelle is on with us. Karen is on with us. Anybody else popping on live, please drop in the chat. Let me know if you can, if you're somewhere where you can type. All right. So here's the definition of psychological resistance. Let's see if you all hear all the gems in this definition that I did. That got me kind of geeked. All right. The concept of psychological resistance. Now, they're speaking in a clinical perspective. So this is talking about like in psychotherapy or in psychology. So when a clinician is working with a patient. So the concept of psychological resistance is that patients are likely to resist suggestions to change behavior or accept certain treatments, regardless of whether that change will improve their condition. Does that sound familiar at all? Resisting suggestions to change behavior or accept treatments or plans, right? Think about that as it relates to health and fitness. Resistance to accepting a plan or accepting suggestions or recommendations from a professional. Even though you're seeing a professional, you're asking for the recommendations, and then you receive the recommendations and you feel some kind of way about it. That's like the short definition of psychological resistance in my vernacular would be, you feel some kind of way. Okay, so it goes on to say, it impedes the development of authentic, reciprocally nurturing experiences in a clinical setting. So think about that as it relates to your relationship with your coach, with your trainer, with your nutritionist, with your community, with the authority that you're speaking to. It's saying it impedes the development of authentic, reciprocally nurturing experiences or relationships. It makes it more difficult for you to have this authentic, beneficial relationship with your practitioner. Psychological resistance can manifest in various ways, such as, now these are the categories I'm going to get into tonight. So think about this. When you hear these categories, think of those examples in your own life. Denying the existence or severity of a problem. So first up, we have denial, or downplaying the seriousness or severity of an issue or a struggle that you're having. 2, rationalizing or minimizing one's responsibility for it. So rationalizing the problem or minimizing your responsibility. That sounds a lot like the blame game, right? Okay, 3, rejecting or distrusting the therapist's or consultant's suggestions. So in health and fitness, that would be your coach, your trainer, your nutritionist, the authority that you're listening to, rejecting or distrusting their advice. What examples do you have for that one? Number 4, withholding or distorting information. Woo! All of those of us who are coaches, we know this one very well. We know how to spot this one in our clients very well and in ourselves. Withholding or distorting information. I think that's the easiest one to find an example for. And then number 5, everybody's favorite term, sabotage. Sabotaging the process. So all the self-sabotage examples are probably coming to mind, right? So Sigmund Freud's psychoanalytic method, this is how he describes it. The discovery of the unconscious and the introduction of it into consciousness is performed in the face of a continuous resistance. So this is what that resistance is, right? What have I said so many times before? Making the unconscious conscious, bringing this subconscious, unconscious behavior that has been on autopilot into conscious awareness so we can do something about it. Faced with this resistance. No, we don't want to look at that. I don't want to look at that. I haven't been looking at that. I didn't want to look at that. Now you've tried to make this lifestyle change, and now I have to look at that, and I don't want to. So it's pushing it away. Resistance, pressure, right? The process of bringing this unconscious material to light is associated with pain. Herein lies the crux, fam. And because of this pain, the patient again and again rejects it. So that is what resistance is. Now, isn't it fascinating? I didn't even write this in my notes, but isn't it fascinating? When I hear resistance as a bodybuilder, what do you think I think of as a tangible example of what resistance is? It's actually another word for what I do as an athlete in training. We can call it weight training. We can call it resistance training. How fascinating. Weight training, strength training, hypertrophy training, bodybuilding training, whatever you want to call it, it's resistance training. Why is it called resistance training? Because you have to have something that you are pushing against, that's pushing against you, that has a force on you, a load, a resistance. Something has to be creating resistance so you can move through that resistance to get stronger. Boom. Karen nailed it. Pushing through, right? What does resistance allow us to do? When we have resistance present in our training, it allows us, when we overcome that resistance, to get better, to get stronger, to improve. And then it also, I didn't write this down specifically for this masterclass. Now I'm wondering if I wrote it anywhere. But something came to my mind the other day. Did I write it down? Yes. This thought came to mind. The difference between a beginner and a pro. As we think about particularly beginners to weight training and professional bodybuilders, for example, or athletes, because I was thinking back to when I first started lifting, first started training. And I would go to classes, group classes, and the instructor would turn their back because they're trying to look at the whole class. And anytime they turned away from me, I would cut corners, I would rest, I would skip exercises because I wanted to get through it without doing all the work. So it made me think of the way that I train now in the gym. Now, as an advanced athlete and lifter, I have to find ways to make it more difficult for myself so I can continue to improve. So, for perfect example, when I write the beginner versus the intermediate versus the advanced programs in the academy, I have to think about ways, all of these advanced strategies in lifting for my advanced group, because doing the basics the same way is not going to continue to get them the results that they would have gotten when they were a beginner. So it made me think of this little soundbite. The difference between a beginner and a pro is that a beginner always seeks to make it easier. A pro looks for how to make it more challenging so they can get better. Pros look for resistance and take on the challenge of moving through the resistance because they understand it's there for a reason and they're going to get better on the other side of it. So mindset is always the thing, right? Stepping into it, we have to have a certain mindset even toward resistance to be open to receiving it, recognizing it, and moving through it. So recognizing the resistance is half of the solution right there. Awareness. Overcoming resistance begins with awareness and acceptance. So, following a new diet, a new training program, setting a new goal, creating a new intention, setting out to change any unhealthy habit will at some point make us crave the comfort of our old habits. Bronson and I just talked about this on our coffee chat. The desire for a break, wanting to take a break from your diet or your training, is essentially saying, I want to take a break from being healthy. But it feels like a break because that old, familiar, poor, unhealthy habits were so familiar to us for so long that pursuing this new goal feels like work, and the unhealthy habit felt like a break, felt like it sounds better to us. We crave it versus craving the thing that is going to make us healthier, make us better in the long run. So, for example, studies show that we are frequently more positive about our abilities than is realistic. So we might think, I've got this. I'm psyched this time. I'm really going to do it this time, right? This is what I was riffing on our coffee chat. We get so excited. We have these rose-colored glasses. We think it's going to be great because we're motivated in the moment. But another psychological interesting, I should have been a psych major. Another interesting psychological aside about the adult brain, we often have trouble projecting how we're going to feel in the future. So it can get more and more difficult to stick with our program when unexpected situations pop up because we are no longer in that motivated state, right? How many times have you said, well, I need to find motivation again? Right? You join groups a lot of the time or join challenges because you need quote unquote motivation. Because you are motivated, you had rose-colored glasses, you set out this plan, and then boom, as soon as you're hit with that first resistance or that first unexpected situation, all this resistance comes up and you don't recognize it for what it is. So you do what? Let it derail you. You get defeated. You get all the words that I always hear. Defeated, what is the other one? Well, derailed, I hear all the time. Demotivated, deflated, all of these things, right? So the most important step to overcoming resistance is that we have to go into any new habit goal that we're setting with understanding, expectation, and acceptance. Recognizing that resistance is going to come and that is a normal part of the process of change. So we have to be vigilant, prepare for it to come, and identify it in its many sneaky forms. And then when it does show up, we need to be patient with ourselves and avoid self-criticism and this whole defeatist mentality. Because that's a part of resistance in and of itself, which we'll get into now. So the examples of resistance, specific examples in our journey. So think about those 5 topics, and I've got a few extras. We're going to talk about extra examples. But those big 5 categories: denial or downplaying the severity of the problem, rationalizing or minimizing responsibility, rejecting or distrusting your coach's suggestions, withholding or distorting information, and sabotaging the process. And Karen already gave a great example. All those people that look for the miracle RX to fix issues instead of eating different. Yes, the magic pill syndrome, as I like to call it. Looking for the prescription, looking for the supplement, looking for the quick fix instead of choosing the more difficult thing, which is changing their own eating habits. Indeed. All right, so think a little bit more on those 5 categories and some examples you may be able to think of, and I'm going to refill the water. Speaking of water, y'all, I have 2 things to share with you. One, I did this on one of my private calls last week, and my client was like, oh my gosh, I didn't think of that. Why did I not think of that? So let me just tell y'all, this is how I do my water every day with my electrolytes. It just looks clear, but it actually has my electrolytes in here. So every night before bed, I fill this baby up. It's about 80 ounces of water. And I put in 2 packets of electrolytes. So right now I'm mixing and matching a couple different ones. So I put them in here. Got to do a little swirl. I hope I don't spill this anywhere. But usually I will take a slotted spoon and just kind of mix it around because it does, you know, the salt and stuff. The electrolytes kind of land in the bottom a little bit. But then I pour from this all day long. So I never have to remember how many times I refilled my tumbler, because if I know this thing has 80 ounces in it, like this is where I'm at right now, and I actually had an extra one of these this morning. So I know that if I finish this, it's 80 ounces, and if I have an extra one of these, my blender bottle is 20 ounces, then I've had my 100 ounces for the day. And considering that it's 7:30 p.m. here, I think I'm going to hit it. 100 ounces is my goal this week. Daily. So, little pro tip on the hydration there. And when I'm on the go, I have a different one. I have the kind that are travel ones. That's about maybe 64 ounces. Okay, the other thing is, I think it was last week's masterclass I mentioned that there was a company that reached out to me about water flavor drops that do not have any sugar and do not have sweeteners. And it is called Stir, and they did send me, oh gosh, I got this blur going on here. I don't know if you're gonna be able to see it, but there. Stir is the name, S-T-U-R. Got a coupon here for buy one, get one free in stores at Target, Publix, and Walmart. And then there's a $5 off online. And they have a ton of different flavors. So it's like 15 plus flavors. Oh, you're probably not going to be able to see that. Anyway, I haven't tried it yet, so I'm not going to tell y'all for sure if I love it. They did give me a code, so I need to find my code. And if I love it, I will share it with you, especially if I think it doesn't taste too sweet. Because they don't use sweeteners, but I think that they have real fruit juice in there, just not enough to put any macros in here. Okay, there's 1 carb. So there you go. 1 carb per serving. And the serving size is half a teaspoon. So I'll be curious. I'll try it for you. I'll let you know what I think. But they sent me the coconut pineapple, strawberry watermelon, sounds really good, and fruit punch. So I'll try them and let y'all know what I think. And if I love them, I will give you my code. FYI, stay tuned. And if I don't like it, I'll keep it real with y'all because you know how I do. Oh, there's nothing like fresh, cold electrolyte water. Okay. Now let's get into the resistance. So examples of resistance specific to your health and fitness journey. All right, the denial piece. I will tell you how I see this the most playing out with clients. Denial or downplaying the severity of a problem. I see clients, okay, how many of y'all have ever been guilty of analysis paralysis? Majoring in the minors. Before you take action on a problem, you are researching every different angle. You have to know what the scientific mechanism is, and you have to know what studies support it, and you're looking for the best possible way to implement this particular thing to make your ketone levels go 2 points higher or whatever it may be. Shout out to Michelle for raising her hand because, girlfriend, I've been there myself. That is actually, in my opinion, a form of denial. It can also fit under the sabotaging, especially if you already have a plan, if you already have an idea. It could actually be a little combination of some of these. A lot of these can like fit in other categories. Because let's say you got some recommendations or suggestions from your coach. An example of rejecting or distrusting your coach could be, now you're going to go do your own research on what your coach recommended. And you're going to find every angle to argue against what your coach recommended because you just don't like what they had to say. And it's not that you don't like it, it's that you're feeling resistance toward doing it. So now you're looking for evidence that you can go against what they're saying. Oh boy, I have another example for that one. Well, let's just jump around here. Who cares? It's my masterclass and I can jump around if I want to. All right. Now, y'all, I have joked before, Bronson knows, about getting a t-shirt that says, I'm not your side coach. Because I cannot tell you how many times I wish I had $1 for everyone who has ever DM'd me, emailed me, messaged me on any different platform to get my thoughts on what their coach is recommending that they do. But they're not working with me. They're working with somebody else, but then they come to me for my opinion on whether or not what their coach told them is right. I'm not your side coach. At the same time, I'm not going to fault anybody for that because y'all know I care a lot. And the last thing I want is for somebody to be blindly listening to someone and following their advice when it's dangerous or, you know, could be harmful. So by all means, I don't want to discourage anyone from ever coming to me, especially if they are concerned about something that their coach recommended to them. But I will say this. I would rather you do your research on the coach before you start working with the coach, so that when you do work with the coach, you have less resistance to what that coach is telling you because you trust them, you trust their expertise, you trust their experience, you trust their knowledge, you trust yourself with them, you believe you're in good hands. So when they recommend something, you can execute it without rejecting it, or at least recognizing, ooh, I think I know where this is coming from, and this is a me problem, this is not a them problem. But if you are constantly second guessing what your coach is telling you, then maybe you should no longer be working with that coach. Or take a break. But tonight, we're really getting into more of the stuff that's you and not them. But I just had to say that because I do get that a lot. And sometimes I've been sitting on the sidelines going, really wish that person was working with me. That's not the way that I would be counseling them. But I can't overstep boundaries because I'm not their coach. So research the coaches well before you work with them. And then I would say you can be more certain that when you're feeling resistance or rejecting or distrust over what they're telling you, you can take a step back and say, wait a minute, do I trust this person? Why did I decide to work with this person? I believe that they're recommending in their best interest. So this must be me. This must be something that's coming up for me. And it's not that I can't trust their advice. Okay. Karen had a couple questions about Stir. No, they don't have electrolytes. These are flavor drops. Yeah, it's just flavors for liquid water enhancer. So no, there's no electrolytes. Yeah, and it looks like it's just fruit juice blends with vitamin C, stevia. So they do have stevia. Yep. They do have a sweetener. They have stevia. Womp womp. I was hoping to find something for Lisa because I think yeah, it was Lisa. I think it was last week when we were talking about trying to find flavor enhancers that do not have any sweeteners, but they do use stevia. So there you go. Would be amazing to find something that didn't have any sweeteners at all. It's interesting, isn't it, that the products have flavorings, but they also have sweeteners. So they could do something with the flavorings without the sweeteners. I imagine they probably don't taste as good without the sweeteners, so they don't think they'll sell. They probably have like focus groups and things that they test these things on, and most people probably wouldn't want them. But I'm one of those weird palate people who no longer needs anything sweet. So I think I'd like it without the sweetener, with just the flavorings. What else? All right. Let's see. So there's another major example of denial or downplaying, big time downplaying. I see this all the time and I call it out whenever I can in check-ins, client check-ins. The use of vague language to sugarcoat the issue so you don't actually have to say what it is. I see this all the time. It'll be like this skirting around the issue language. Oh, I wish I had some of the examples now front of mind. But it's the most interesting thing when I read written check-ins. They're being so careful about the words that they use so that they don't just tell me what they did or didn't do. Instead of saying, I ate cake this week 3 times in this situation, even though I said I wasn't going to do it, there's language of, I went outside my macros, or usually it's not even using the term I. It'll be, there were some carbs this week, or some carbs got in there this week. Just very passive language, not taking that responsibility. And so that can also fit under the rationalizing or minimizing responsibility category. Exactly. Avoiding the truth, withholding. So withholding or distorting information, that really fits in all 3 of those categories. It's this like, how can I talk about it so that I don't actually say what the problem is? But here's I go back to what I just said earlier. Beginner's mentality is, how can I make this as easy as possible? Which in other words can be, how can I get by doing the least, right? And that's what I would say this is. So I want to especially challenge anyone, especially when you're working with a coach or you're in a program or you're in an environment where you can get support and guidance from someone else, from a professional, right? But you could also apply this in other areas. If you have a friend you've asked to be an accountability buddy and then you're not checking in, or you're using any of these things when you're checking in with your accountability partner to kind of get off the hook, whether that's your spouse or a friend or a coach or anyone, but especially when you are paying for coaching from a professional. I want you to think about every check-in like there's a dollar amount on this check-in. I am investing in a professional opinion. So much like going to the gym and going through the motions, you can do that for months and years and not get results. Or you can lean in and say, I'm investing in this. I'm investing time. I'm investing money. That means I need to invest my effort. I'm only going to get out what I put in. So if I show up fully and lean in, say the hard things, stop phoning it in, stop doing the least, then I can now have the pro mentality and lean into getting everything I can out of this. meaning I need to put everything I can into this. So I'm going to share it all with my coach because they are the professional. If I lay it all out there and I say, here you go, they can do something with that, and then they can serve me better, and then I'll have better advice, and I'll have better recommendations, and I'll have more support. Lisa, I love it. I have done that in the past, but have gotten much better. Yes, you have, because your coach has been bragging on you. She says, I have to be totally honest with myself. It's the only way, truly. It's the only way out is through, as I always say, right? When we lay it all on the line, hiring this firm, I don't know if I've said it on a masterclass yet. I know I've told the Academy ladies, but I hired a firm to redo my website. I hired a consultant or a social media manager to manage my social media, to essentially audit everything I'm doing, look at everything. And on my website, they're looking at everything and redoing it from a professional lens, right? That's taking time, that's taking money, that's taking effort on my part. They're now holding me accountable for deliverables that I need to provide to them, right? I would be doing myself a disservice if I don't deliver everything that they ask me to deliver so that they can deliver to me their best work. If I give them bottom of the barrel, if I barely put anything into what I give them, they're not going to give me something that I can be proud of on the other side of that. And that's what a coach is. Essentially we work for you. So we want you to show up. And then when you show up, we can show up for you. Otherwise, we're sitting there twiddling our fingers, hoping you'll give us something to work with. Right? We can only work with what you give us. Okay. So let's see. Those are the big ones with denial, downplaying. Okay. Rationalizing or minimizing responsibility. So big one here is what I see all the time. Another thing in check-ins. Blaming situations, blaming other people, or blaming life for your actions or inaction. Talking about, so many, this one also fits under withholding information or distorting information or the downplaying thing. It fits in there very well because I will see check-ins where somebody just wants to chat about whatever else, but they don't actually get to the issue. So it's everything in there is about all the challenges that came up, all of the situations that came up. But okay, so then how does that relate to your goals? How does that relate to the plan? You told me about the car accident. You told me about this thing that happened at work. You told me about your spouse. You told me about your kids. Now let's get to you. Let's get to you. What happened? What did you do or not do? How did that impact what you set out to do, your intentions for the week? And then what did you do about it? So I have a very intentional, over the years, I've changed our check-in form to ask questions a little differently because I used to, just ask what were the challenges that came up this week. And it would just be a laundry list of challenges. Well, now I ask that question a little differently. We now ask, what were the challenges or obstacles that you ran into this week? And then what happened? What did you do in light of those? And what did you learn from that experience? So a lot of the time now when clients are filling out that question, it is beginning with challenges and then ending with them discovering that they have more wins or more things they could acknowledge themselves for that they didn't even recognize. Oh, wow, I was confronted with this, but I did this, so I still ended up staying on my plan. Those are now more things you can celebrate yourself for and acknowledge yourself for, and it keeps you from feeling as defeated as you would have if all you were doing was thinking about the problem. So a way of rationalizing or minimizing responsibility is by avoiding your part in the situation by just talking about the problem. And by the way, this is something that is pervasive in our culture in general. This just constant rehashing of problems in our lives. How many of you have ever, raise your hand or don't if you're ashamed to admit it, had the same conversation about something bad that happened with 5 different people in your life? You spoke to your spouse about it. You spoke to your parent about it. You spoke to your sibling about it. You spoke to a friend at work about it. You talked to 5 different people, and now you have now brought this problem up front of mind into your consciousness 5 different times after the fact. So you're highlighting and keeping the problem alive instead of focusing on solutions and moving forward. I had to digress about that because that is a personal pet peeve of mine. We don't need to talk about it 5 times. Talk to your therapist about it if it's staying on your mind and you're having a hard time letting it go. But don't just bring every different person in your life into it, because now you're also sharing that energy with them. Have 1 or 2 trusted friends that you can have a discussion with, and then that's it. If you need to unpack it further, seek professional help. Okay. Yep. Okay. Now I'm feeling more validated. Thank you, ladies, for telling me I'm not alone, because I know I've been there. But I've also shut down some dear, dear people to me saying, listen, because sometimes that you also say the same thing to the same person multiple times. Okay. So I've been the person on the other side. And I've been like, listen, we've spoken about this before. I know all the details. Please let's not go through it again. Amen, Karen. You're either part of the problem or part of the solution. And, you can challenge your loved ones on this too. If they've come to you and they've already hashed it all out and they want to discuss it again, by all means, you are within your right to say, hey, I know we already talked about that. Let's move on or change the subject. All right. Obviously, with rationalizing comes justifying, right? This is one of the biggest ones when it comes to resistance. Oh boy. And it'll happen in your mind before you start saying it to anybody else. But y'all, it literally happened tonight. I'm going to share an example from my own life tonight. So I set my new macros for my mini cut. And this week, I started really pulling back on the macros because last week it was more about getting active. I kept my food up on purpose. I didn't want to enter into pulling back on nutrition yet. So this week I was like, you know what? Let's go for it. I want to go on this mini cut for a full 4 weeks and go in. So let's go ahead and pull from the food. And I'm now also increasing my cardio. So I set these macros. And then I killed it today, y'all. I did my morning cardio like I said I would. Got up earlier to do it, which felt amazing. Nailed it with my food, timed it right, hit my training, went to the gym earlier than usual. Like, ideal day. Had my last meal at like 5 o'clock, 5:30 in the evening, which that was another goal of mine. I have a eating curfew that I set myself. So all that nailed. And then I was like, I'm a little bit under my macros, so I could have a little bit more. So I added a little bit more, had a little snack. And I was like, okay, I'm going to get blood work tomorrow. And I was like, oh, let me see what my macros were the day before I got blood work last month, because I am trying to control for some variables with my blood work, because I'm trying to figure out if this really awesome blood work I got last month is accurate and is still just as great, or if it might have been a fluke. I hope it's not a fluke because it was so good. I just want it to be good again. So I looked at what my macros were the night before my blood work, and of course they were higher because I was not cutting yet. So they were higher by a good 200 to 300 calories more. So more carbs and more fat. Actually, it was all three macros because it was higher protein then too. So all my macros were a little bit higher. So then I thought, I should probably try to match that. So I'll have another snack. Now, yes, I could say, well, I really just wanted to control for the variables, and that's the only reason why I did that. But the truth is, I wanted to eat a snack. I was relaxing. I had done everything I said I was going to do in the day, and I was just like, I've been snacking, and I want to snack again. That was resistance. That was my limbic brain justifying, why should I have a little bit more snack? Let's get those carbs a little higher so they're closer to what they were before. Let's get all my macros a little higher. That's justification. Really, do I think that 200 calories is going to make that big of a difference on my blood work? The first day, mind you, y'all, because this is day one of the cut. If I had a little bit less calories today, one time, it ain't going to make that big of a difference. Now, the carbs being significantly different, maybe, I don't know, but it was justification. But I thought that would be a great example just to show that, like, the justification thoughts, they can be all kinds of things we're not expecting. So there's always like this sneaky behavior of the limbic brain of justification. If you took only this one example out of this entire list, you could take just this one and make a laundry list of justifications you've heard in your mind. Because this is exactly, now this is what Dr. Glenn Livingston calls binge triggers and binge trigger busters. He has a book called that. So I always talk about one of my most highly recommended resources is Dr. Glenn Livingston's Never Binge Again book, but he has a bunch of other little mini booklets that he's written, and there's binge trigger busters. I can't remember the names of all of them, but he talks a lot about this, identifying this voice and identifying what he calls the pig squeal, because he calls it the pig brain. So all of these little justifications, there's a million of them, and they're going to crop up everywhere, especially day 1, 2, 3, 4 of the new habit, because your emotional brain is so attached to those old behaviors. I was surprised that I didn't have all those things coming up today when I woke up early or when I went to go do my cardio, because I expected it. And maybe that's part of it, is that I was so expecting the resistance and prepared for it that it didn't show up. But I bet you it was just trying to trick me. And tomorrow it'll probably show up. A really easy justification tomorrow would be, oh, I have blood work, so I shouldn't do any cardio. The truth is, my cardio right now is a walk. It's not intense exercise. So yes, you are not supposed to do intense exercise before you go get blood work, but a walk is not intense exercise. So I'm already prepared with my rebuttal. When it tries to tell me, oh, you're going to have to fast for longer than you normally do because of the blood work, so you shouldn't go for your walk today. Because what? I'm going to wait 1 extra hour to eat. I think I'll be okay. I'm not going to starve if I go for a walk and wait 1 more hour to eat. Not that big of a deal, right? Oh my gosh, already it's been coming up with the, oh, do I really have to be fasted? Maybe I can still have my creamer and my coffee. It's like, no, we're ready. We're prepared. Shut it down. All right, but I already know what's going to happen. So if you go into it with the rose-colored glasses, as I said, you're going to miss these things. But if you go in seeking, looking for it. Where's it going to be? Let me look for the resistance. It's coming. It's almost like a little game of cat and mouse, right? You're not going to get me, resistance. I'm ready for you. Okay, let's see. Already talked about rejecting or distrusting your coach, getting second opinions, going and doing your own research. But another way that this shows up is just anger. I remember being so mad at my bodybuilding coach, the one that helped me get my pro card. Man, there would be so many times I would go to the gym and I would be like doing the workouts and I'd be mad at him and just cursing him under my breath. And my last coach from my last show before this past one. Oh man, I used to be like, I don't understand. Why is he doing this? What is this exercise? It's stupid. I did it like in the gym. And then I would just be like, okay, do the exercise. Or if I didn't get it and I was like, this is the stupidest thing. He didn't write this down right. And then I would ask him about it and then he'd show it to me and I'd be like, oh, okay, this is just a totally different exercise. I didn't realize this is what he wanted me to do. Had I not asked him, I would have just been like, this is stupid. Nobody's ever heard of this. This isn't even an exercise. And I would have skipped it because my own ego was making me feel like, oh, I know everything, right? But the point is, I hired this person for a reason. I trust their judgment. I trust that this guy has experience in bodybuilding and he knows how to train in ways I maybe never even thought of before. So instead of getting angry and just deciding I'm not going to do it, I'm going to ask him a question and then he can explain it to me. And then now I know a whole new way of doing a whole new exercise I didn't know existed. How cool, right? We can learn when we're not so egotistical. Oh my gosh, Karen, you're my sister from another mister. This is what I do too. She said, made my protein coffee and took it to my appointment so I could have it immediately after my blood draw. I wanted it so bad. It's always my morning start. Same. Every time I get my blood work, I make my coffee first and I pack it up and I bring it with me and I will bring it in because as soon as they're done pulling, yes, ma'am, it'll be right there with me tomorrow. The funny thing, though, is that the last time I got my hormone panel, I was not fasted because I was told I don't need to fast for that panel. I didn't do it along with all my other blood work that I normally do with the A1C and the insulin and all the other stuff that you do need to be fasted for. So I will be interested to see. That is one of the variables that will change because this time I'm getting a full panel, all the panels with everything. So I do need to be fasted this time. So I'll be curious to see if the hormone panel comes out differently when I'm fasted versus fed. And then if so, then next month, because I decided I'm going to get my hormone panel done once a month for 3 months just to see what the average is, because I don't know yet if I can trust this new blood work. So I'll be curious to see if it's because I was fed that time. So we'll see. I'll keep you posted. I'm very intrigued. It shouldn't make a difference, they said, for hormones, but we will see. All right. Let's see. Denial, rationalization, rejection, withholding or distorting information. Best example here, not tracking. And where do I see this the most? When you're not following the plan. Either skipping days of tracking nutrition, skipping, not tracking, not getting on the scale after you messed up because you know you messed up and you know it's going to impact the scale. So what do I see? I see 2 days, 1 or 2 days without tracking on the scale, corresponding usually with 1 or 2 days of either untracked days or partially tracked days of nutrition. And then once everything comes down again, then you start tracking everything again. Yeah. That's another example, y'all, of not putting in what you want to get out and keeping yourself from getting your investment back. You're choosing to basically invest partially instead of investing all the way, and then you're not going to be able to get the result out of that you want. As a coach, when I look at like some nutrition information without all of it and some biometric data without all of it, I like to say if I don't have all the data, I might as well have none, because I can't read this. I can't extrapolate anything from it. How am I supposed to give you recommendations if I can't tell what's going on here? I'm like, did you really eat only 400 calories yesterday? Or were there just some things that are not tracked? So now it throws off your averages. I don't even know what your week looks like now, because you've got some days where things are not tracked and other days, this day isn't tracked at all. I have no idea, right? So not tracking or partially tracking your nutrition, your biofeedback, your biometrics, withholding information because it doesn't look good. That's usually what it is, right? Oh, I don't want coach to see that. So when you don't track the cheats or the extras or the off-plan eating, like, we need that information. You always think you're going to be judged or something. Got to see it all. And you might be doing that on your own if you're not working with a coach. That used to be me. The thing, I think I've told you all this many times, one of the most powerful things I started doing that helped me stop binge eating was I started tracking every single binge. And I made myself look at it. Remember what Sigmund Freud said, it's pain. I had to look at that pain. Bringing the unconscious conscious. Why do you not track when you binge? Because you don't want to see it. You know you ate a ton of food, but you don't want to look at what the numbers are. But guess what? Your body took it in. It's there whether you see it or not. And when we start to choose to see it, to face the pain, we're facing the resistance and we're moving through it. So finally, the sabotage. Boy, does this come in a lot of different ways. What are some of your examples of how you have sabotaged yourself in the past or your efforts in the past? Some of the things we already mentioned fit in there too, right? Sabotaging by not sharing all the information, sabotaging by avoiding, sabotaging by rationalizing. Any of these other things are also sabotage, in my opinion. How about ghosting? Ghosting your coach, ghosting your community. How many times have I seen in the Facebook group or in the academy, hey, y'all, I've been gone for a while. Just needed to do my own thing. But usually doing my own thing means not doing anything, not doing any of the things, unfortunately. But do you tend to do better when you're on your own or when you have the support of a community or a professional or a confidant? Ghosting or hiding is only making the situation worse. It's not the way to deal with resistance. So resistance in and of itself may feel like, remember, as I said, about taking a break on your diet, taking a break on your training. I've heard, I just need to take a break from the group for a while. That's you ready to let yourself off the hook because you don't want to be seen. And that was me in the height of my bulimia. I hid away from everyone. I wanted to be by myself in the dark. And guess what thrives in darkness? Shame and fear and resistance. It will thrive. You will not thrive. You thrive in community. You thrive in the light, bringing things into the light of day. So if you feel yourself thinking, I need to take a break, meaning I'm going to go away from my support system for a while, be aware that that is a form of resistance, and it is a very dangerous one. Because the farther you get away from your support system, the easier it is to get down deeper and deeper into the spiral, into the hole. All right. And then finally, this one was care of Bronson. I asked him for his examples. Ghosting was one of them. The other was weaponized incompetence. Have you all heard this term being shared, become a popular term on the interwebs? But the way that this plays out in our context is making things more complicated than they need to be. So you can play the victim. So you can feel like, and you can say that it's too difficult for you. You can't figure it out. But you also then probably don't let anybody help you figure it out. I've had people post in their check-ins, I still can't figure out how to hit my macros. I'm still not sure how to hit my macros, but they don't ask any questions. They don't share any additional information, even when I ask for it. Specifically, what is causing a problem for you? What is making it difficult for you to track? And then I get nothing. And then they're gone. And then they decide they want to leave, usually, eventually. Because it's this not putting the effort in, right? Help me help you. Jerry Maguire. I like to say things get to be as easy as we want them to be, as we make them out to be. So don't make it more difficult and more complicated than it needs to be. You don't need 20 recipes to start eating low carb. You don't need to read 10 books on carnivore before you start day one. That kind of goes back to that denial or avoiding the majoring and the minors, right? I don't know how to meal prep for the entire family for the whole month, so I might as well not start today. What? It doesn't have to be all of that. All right, so let's talk about overcoming resistance. Like I said, learning to anticipate it and identify it when it shows up, be prepared for it, that's half the battle right there. Arming yourself with that knowledge, that expectation, so you don't have to fear it, but you can quickly say, I know what that is, and I don't have to fall for it. Next, executive function. That's what this prefrontal cortex is. This is where we do our problem solving, our planning, self-regulation, emotional regulation, executive functioning skills. Okay, so we can use that to turn down the volume on the resistance coming from the limbic emotional brain, survival brain. So some ways that we can do that: leaning into changing our habits. It requires effort, as we talked about, putting in the effort you want to get back, learning, and practice. So I love this. Michelle Sagar, in her book, The Joy Choice, sets up a system called POP, P-O-P, where you take a pause so you can explore your O, options, and then P, pick a different one that's in line with your goals. So I'm now intrigued. I want to read this book called The Joy Choice by Michelle Sagar, S-E-G-A-R. She emphasizes that this process takes time and practice. Learning about what options are healthy and sustainable is a key part of the equation. So the learning piece, right? That's number 2. Learning can expand what we perceive our current choices or options are, and can result in developing new directions, right? So if we've always done what we've always did, then we're always going to get what we've always gotten, right? So the new direction becomes our own choice, choosing, when we can expand our perception of what our choices are. It's not, I don't only have to choose what I've always chosen before. I can do something different. So I like this concept. So it can be based on what fits into our life, something that we are likely to actually do, and ultimately something we can sustain. So what do I always talk about? Sustainable changes, right? Don't expect yourself to be able to do a 180 overnight if you've never done that before. One way to think about this is, okay, if there are certain nights where your family eats certain things, they have pizza night, or you go to this particular restaurant, you know you're going to keep going to that restaurant, start to explore what your options are. What could you do without completely upending and changing everybody's habit and say, we can't ever go to that restaurant again. Wait, is there something on the menu you could order that would be different for you? Or is there something else you can do when the family's getting pizza? Can you eat the toppings off? Can you prepare yourself something and still engage in the experience that your family's having? So finding ways that don't completely upend your current existence, that can fit within your current lifestyle, but move you in the direction. So it doesn't feel like an all or nothing, as I always talk about, right? And then finally, we have to be realistic about resistance, as I talked about. It's going to happen. It doesn't mean you're lazy. It doesn't mean you lack willpower. So you want to look at the bigger picture, accept that habits are difficult to break. It's not going to be easy. It's not going to be rose-colored glasses all the way through. It's just a matter of simply exchanging an old habit for a healthier one by one. So overall, change is a process. It's a slow process. You can't just make all these changes overnight. This is why I like to say, not to bite off more than you can chew. Focus on the low-hanging fruit, right? We talked earlier about that first one, the denial of the problem, right? Another big thing that people do is they want to work on everything but the most important problem, right? Go keto when I'm binging. Keto's going to solve it. And then you still binge. Well, binging is the problem. Let's focus on that first. It doesn't matter what your macros are right now. It doesn't matter if you're in a deficit right now. What we first need to do is stop the binging. Let's focus on the big, big habit. And we all are capable of doing this, looking at our entire diet lifestyle and saying, what is the one thing that if I changed this one thing today, this would make the biggest difference? That's usually going to be the big problem that most of the time we want to solve last. Because that whole denial, that's resistance. Denial of the big problem. So let's go fix all the little tiny things first. But usually it's going to work the other way around. Focus on the big problem first. It's going to make the biggest difference. And then you can work out all the other things later. So also, by making small changes or focusing on one thing at a time, it reduces the need to resist, because you're not making it so painful, right? What was that quote from Freud again? The process of bringing the unconscious material to light is associated with pain. And because of this pain, the patient again and again rejects it. So you don't need to reject it if we don't make the pain so great. My other favorite quote is that when the pain of staying the same is greater than the pain of change, is when you will change. There's pain associated with change. That's what we're talking about here. That's what resistance is. It's this pain, this discomfort of changing something that we're comfortable with. we've been familiar with, I'll say. Familiarity and comfort have been in the old unhealthy, and we're trying to make the new healthy choices become the comfort, but there's a whole road in between there, right? So the pain of change is greater than the pain of remaining the same. You will stay the same. You will not change anything. When the pain of remaining the same is so great that you look at that pain of change and it doesn't look so bad, and you're willing to change and to go through that pain, that's when you'll do it. So for my ladies in the academy, you got a task today inside the challenge to start working on your big why and big why not, or revisiting them if you've already done that. The big why not is the pain. So I generally recommend starting there first. And that is looking at the pain you will be in your life, of your current pain points, of why you want to change, why you don't want to be where you are in a year from now. You have to look at, well, where will I be in a year if I don't make these changes? And that is a powerful tool to arm yourself with when the resistance comes up. Because when the resistance comes up, you can confront it with the pain of remaining the same. And say, okay, I know I'm making all of these excuses and justifications to not do my morning cardio. But if I don't do my morning cardio, this is where I'm going to be in a year. And if I do it, this is where I'm going to be in a year. And I want to be here, not there. So I know that the resistance is there, and I'm going to shut it down. And I'm going to move through it, and I'm going to get stronger and better on the other side of it. Because that's all it is, right? The next time resistance comes up and you recognize it for what it is, I want you to say to yourself, this is resistance training. I am going to do my resistance training right now, and I am going to move through this resistance, and I'll be stronger on the other side of it. And with that, that's all I have for you tonight. I love y'all. Give your resistance a run for its money this week, this month, this year. I love y'all. If you have further questions about resistance or more examples you want to drop in the comments, drop them below. Otherwise, let me know if you have topics you want me to cover in the future. Do you want to come say bye before I get off?
See y'all.
He's got his team protein.
I got a call in a minute.
You got a call?
Yeah.
Okay. Good night. Go crush it this week. Move through that resistance, fam.